Jack Grealish is undoubtedly a captivating figure. Off the pitch, he is charismatic, fun, and wherever he goes, he wins people over with his friendly personality. That's great. But unfortunately, this video isn't about his character. Today, we're going to talk about football. More specifically, about how in 2024, Grealish became one of the biggest flops in European football. It might sound harsh to say that, but the numbers don't lie. In an entire year, playing nearly 50 matches, Grealish didn't score a single goal. His last goal came on December 16, 2023, in a draw against Crystal Palace. Since then, Grealish has endured a disastrous 2024 on the pitch. But what went wrong? How did the most expensive player in English football history reach this point? That's what we're going to explore today. First, let's provide some context. Grealish is frequently compared to other players who failed to meet expectations. Some of you might remember the debates about Mudryk and Antony being among the Premier League's worst investments, right? Well, now Grealish has joined that conversation. While Antony and Mudryk at least managed to occasionally contribute to their teams, Grealish seems to be struggling to justify every penny of the 117.5 million euros the city paid for him. Let's understand how he got to this point. As mentioned, last season sparked heated debates about the league's worst investments. On one side, Mudryk, signed for 84 million euros. On the other, Antony, who joined Manchester United for 95 million euros. Both players failed to fully justify their hefty price tags, drawing heavy criticism from the press and fans. Mudryk contributed to 9 goals in 41 games, and Antony 5 in 35, both falling short of expectations. However, now in 2024, Grealish is at the center of this discussion. The 117.5 million euros Manchester City paid seems even more absurd when comparing Grealish's performance to the other two. Unlike them, who at least contributed sporadically with goals or assists, Grealish's performances have grown increasingly lackluster. This failure, however, isn't recent. It's the result of a gradual decline over the years that escalated in 2024. What's most intriguing is that, in my opinion, the Englishman hasn't faced as much criticism as Antony and Mudryk, who were frequently the targets of memes and jokes online. With Grealish, there seems to be a greater level of tolerance. Many attribute his below-average performance to the team's poor form overall, which is fair. The press, fans, and even analysts often shift the blame to the collective struggles of the team rather than focusing on Grealish's individual performance. Still, it's curious to see how Grealish seems to evade criticism. The big question remains: what really happened to him? How did such a talented and promising player go from being one of the Premier League's best to becoming a shadow of his former self? The answer may lie in Guardiola's style of play and the role he assigned to Grealish. When Manchester City signed him, the Englishman wasn't brought in to be the offensive protagonist. Nobody expected him to deliver an extraordinary number of goals or assists. Quite the opposite, in fact. Instead, his primary role was different. He was brought in to contribute to the collective game of a team already filled with stars. What Guardiola wanted from Grealish was essentially to be a cog in City's system, a player to hold on to the ball, transition play, and create opportunities without constantly standing out. This may explain why Grealish was never a prolific scorer or assister. His style of play focuses much more on ball possession and controlling the tempo, something crucial for Guardiola. In this context, the Englishman is a player who holds the ball, dribbles efficiently but avoids taking risks. His ability to maintain possession, slow down the game, and in crucial moments draw fouls and attract markers makes him a useful player in a very specific tactical system. However, this more understated and less flashy role doesn't justify the price paid for him. By 2024, his performances have become increasingly questionable, as the role he plays in the team seems to be more and more secondary. Guardiola has never demanded a radical change from Grealish. In his approach, perhaps the lack of freedom and distance from his creative nature have led to a certain wear and tear. He is no longer the explosive and inventive Grealish of old. Instead, he has become an almost invisible piece in Guardiola's system. Even with such a high investment by City, the main issue isn't that the Englishman doesn't fit into Guardiola's system, but that he seems to have lost much of what made him unique: his audacity and unpredictability. Comparing today's Grealish with the one from his Aston Villa days is like comparing two different players. Back at Villa, Grealish was the center of attention. He had the freedom to create plays, take risks with long passes, and lead the team's offensive drives. Villa, of course, was a mid-table side, and Grealish was essentially the only player capable of doing something extraordinary, whether through a dazzling dribble or an audacious pass. He was the team's engine, the player everyone watched whenever the ball was at his feet. For instance, in the 2020 to 2021 season, Grealish tallied 6 goals and 10 assists in 26 league matches, impressing with his ability to create scoring opportunities. He was the driving force behind most of Aston Villa's offensive production, always making a difference in the final third. Now, wearing Manchester City's jersey, that freedom has been replaced by a more reactive role, lacking the same aggressiveness and creativity. The Grealish of today has become a player who simply passes the ball, and that's it. He no longer has the same drive he once displayed at Villa. This is evident both in his stats and his playing style. Instead of attempting daring passes or risky dribbles, he has become a safe link in Guardiola's attack, contributing to possession, but not providing the same offensive dynamism. Grealish's decline isn't just a technical shift, it also represents a change in his identity as a player. He is no longer the creative leader, the one who takes control of the game and makes things happen. He has become just another piece in a system that demands less of his creativity and far more of his ability to maintain possession. In the process, he seems to have lost some of the magic that made him special. When you pay 117.5 million euros for a player, you expect far more than what Grealish has delivered. Comparisons with other players who cost similar amounts or even less, like Antony, reinforce the idea that the Englishman's performance is falling far short of what's expected for a player of his value. The saddest part is that, while Grealish has somewhat adapted to Guardiola's system, he seems to be losing his essence, the spark that made him an unpredictable and fascinating player at Aston Villa. In my opinion, what City needs now is a more incisive, audacious, and bold Grealish, the one who was a standout for Dean Smith's team. The problem is that, as the season progresses, it seems that Grealish's individuality has been sacrificed for the collective, and his output has dropped significantly as a result. It's clear that Guardiola's style of play doesn't favor Grealish's creative freedom as it did at Aston Villa. The same could be said for other players like Haaland. By the way, if you'd like a video about the striker, let me know in the comments. That said, Grealish's future at Manchester City, at least in my opinion, remains uncertain. In 2024, his lack of significant improvement has raised many questions about his role in the team. Some suggest that Grealish needs to be bolder, take more risks, and try to regain the confidence that made him shine in the Premier League. Others believe his role in Guardiola's system needs to be redefined. Perhaps a more advanced position on the field or a more central role could help him stand out. Regardless, Grealish is undoubtedly one of the most talented players of his generation, at least in my opinion. His skill with the ball and vision of the game have always been impressive. However, his adaptation to Manchester City, especially under Guardiola's management, has been a journey filled with ups and downs. And let's be honest, far more downs than ups. Ultimately, the real question is to what extent playing systems, can unlock the full potential of players like Grealish. City's system is undoubtedly successful. That's not the point here. But perhaps it needs some adjustments to unleash the individual brilliance of its most creative players. We're already seeing how the lack of players performing at their peak is costing the team. Until then, the wait for the real Grealish continues, and he still faces the challenge of finding his true role in the team. Will he ever return to being the standout player he was at Aston Villa, or is his time at City coming to an end? Let us know in the comments. Until next time.